You're welcome. I'm positive without having antibodies. Not that type. Yeah, I copy. Don't worry. Almost starting. Give me 1 minute and then we'll start. Tomorrow we're going back, Rabbi say. Yeah, except for you, Rabbi Khan. You stay home. Everybody else back. Zolti, you don't have it, right? Had it. You're coming back. No games. Have it. Pekarsky, you're coming back, right? No corona. Chody, what's with you? You're coming back? Everybody's back. All right. Don't come back if you're not feeling well. Anybody's not feeling well, don't come back. Nothing personal. Actually, it is personal. I mean, you, whoever has not feeling well, don't come back. All right, I think we'll start. Okay, let's Bez Hashem. Let's start over here. I know there's a lot of animal lovers amongst us, and let's try to clarify some of the nekudas yesterday. Some of the nekudas from yesterday. Let's try Bez Hashem to satisfy the animal lovers amongst us. First of all, when you start such a sugya and you talk about pets, they give a little bit of akdam over here. I don't. There maybe are more makoiris to the Indian of Tsar Bar Chaim kimat than kimat, separate makoiris al kapanim than kimat any other isser in the Torah. There's so many branches and offshoots of the isser of Tsar Bar Chaim that it's unbelievable. For example, I mean, everyone knows that the pasuk of Azov, Tazov, Imoy, Rashi says that's the makor. Rashi Shabbos Daf Kuf Chav Chesem Beis. That's the makor of Tsar Bar Chaim deraisa. Mandam that holds that Tsar Bar Chaim is deraisa is because if you have to help an animal, even when you didn't do anything to the animal, you didn't positively hit the animal, but you have to take off the load of the animal. That's because Tsar Bar Chaim is deraisa. It's one makor. The Mishabura brings this makor in Siman Shinei, Sivkat and Samach Tes. Tsar Bar Chaim deraisa. Where do we learn that from? From the fact that the Torah tells us to unload the animal's load. The Rishayim bring down the Meiri Baba Mitzia Daflam Beis Beis brings down the makor of Tsar Bar Chaim. It's because the pasuk says Loisachsem Shor B'Dishai. I'm working now. I have to worry about the animal while I'm working. Yes, says the Torah. When you are threshing, you make sure that the animal is able to eat too. Otherwise, it'll have an extra tsar. The chinuch in mitzvah Tav Kuf Nun learns out the mitzvah of Tsar Bar Chaim from a pasuk in the Torah of Loisachresh. Loisachresh shor v'chamor b'yachad. You're not allowed to have the shor and the chamor Kilayim working together. What's the reason why you can't have a shor and a chamor together? So some say the Ibn Ezra, I think, says because a shor works at a different pace than a chamor. But the chinuch explains that bichlal, they just don't, they don't get along together. They don't get along together. They don't get along together. So Mamela, since they don't get along together, so therefore you can't have them working together. And he says that's a big insight in life. You have a chavrusa shaf that doesn't work. You can't have it. You can't have a chavrusa shaf. They don't get along. You can't put two people together which have different natiyas and different tendencies. He learns out from over here. Tsar Bar Chaim. Learns out Tsar Bar Chaim. Maisa, they say pshat. What's the pshat? The chamor sees the shore and it looks like he's always eating, because since he chooses cod, So he has a lot of agmas nefesh to chamor because it looks like the shore is getting more food because the whole time the shore is eating. And it's not really true. It's not the pshat that he's really eating. The pshat is that he has in his, he chews his cud. He's constantly chewing. So, we would have thought like, who cares? Who cares? One second. I just have to fix the internet. 1 second. Sorry, everybody saying. Okay, now we should be okay. Sorry. Everyone's still there? Sorry. So the pshat is that you have a chamor and you have a shore. The chamor looks like he's eating. The shore looks like he's always constantly eating, and the shore looks like he's constantly eating, and the chamor gets jealous. It looks like he has more food. Why doesn't somebody just tell the chamor to be a mensch? I mean, he explained to him the matziv. And also, why do I have to worry about this when I'm trying to work? Says the chinuch, no, a yid has to learn how to have rachmanis and compassion, v'racham of kol ma'asav, and you even have to care about the feelings, the emotional feelings of your chamor, because your chamor is going to have an agmas nefesh, and that's so important that the Chazal say, therefore, you can't have the shore and the chamor working together, because tar b'li chayim. The Red Baz learns out, it's Allah l'Moshe Misinai. There's a pasuk, some Sofer says, the Iker Makor, Daf Lamed Beis and Beis, is because v'racham of kol ma'asav. This is a way of going in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is rachmim kol ma'asav, we also have to have rachmim kol ma'asav. We also have to try to shtelzu. Rav Moshe has an incredible tshuva. Rav Moshe talks about veal. If anybody knows how to make veal, you lose your cheshik for eating the stuff. How do you get that white meat, that very, very white veal? You take the animal, and he never ever got mother's milk, and you basically stuff him and you basically feed him all types of dreadful foods that keeps the meat a certain color and a certain texture. And the Maisa, the Shaykhid told Rav Moshe that 85% of them are treif because they get so fashmetet and dust. So 85% of them come out treif. Rav Moshe says, that's Sar B'alei Chayim. But I got to make a parnasa. Yeah. You're allowed to use animals, but you're not allowed to abuse animals. You're not allowed to misuse animals. And this Rabbi is not a din in animal rights activists. Animal rights activists feel that, inhumane behavior called the animals, right? Because they feel that the animals and them are on the same level because they are. But by us, it's not the pshat. The pshat is that it has to create in us a rachmanis. And the pshat is not that it's not ben adam lebehemtoi, ben adam lekalboi. It's ben adam la'atzmai, a person that he treats an animal a certain way. He's a rachmanistic person. So that's why we have all of these halachas. That's why we have these dinim. The dinim that we have are based on the fact that not that the animal fakert. Be'etzim, if you want to use an animal, because Baruch Hu gave animals to use. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave an animal that you could ride on a horse, and you're allowed to use the animals. That's not the issue. It's when you're misusing the animals. And like the Trumas Hadeshin says, the Trumas Hadeshin is brought down in the Ramah, in Even Ezer, Ramah, very famous in Siman Hay, in Sifid Daled. He says, anything needed for refuah, or l'shar dvarim, there's no issue of tzar b'alei chayim. There's no issue. If you're doing it for, people, someone told me that some people, they're against the vaccine simply because they tried it out on animals. Why did the Rebbeinu Shalom send animals if not to try out the vaccine on these guys? What are you talking about? That's what it says first in the Trumas Hadeshin. You're supposed to test it on animals. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the animals to be mishamish man. The schus of the animals in the Teva is from Noach. Since HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved Noach, therefore, the animals live too. The whole tachlis of the animal is to be mishamish a person. So therefore, for shtetzach, you're allowed to do testing on the animals, and you're allowed to do all types of things. If you need to ride on an animal, if you need to use an animal, that's all permitted. But you're not allowed to abuse or misuse. Like, for example, you're going to say, well, any usage. I can't take so I could take a cat, I could swing him by his tail and right, and see how far he flies. That's not a usage. You'll say, what do you mean? We're having a game. Whoever can throw him the furthest wins. That your necessity in the animal's torture doesn't warrant the amount of torture that the animal has. That's what you have to know. Also, if you see kids and they're picking off the wings, you remember this one, Rabbi Yisai? I remember they used to pick off the wings of the little, like, birds and things like that, and little mosquito loch and dust, right? That's Tzar B'Lechaim. Tzar B'Lechaim. You're not allowed to do that. And how do you have to stop a child if you see doing such things? Because Lemaisa is countless psukim. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, where does he learn Tzar B'Lechaim from? He learns it out from Bilam hitting his animal. And the Malach gave him Musar about schmeissing his animal. So you see, learn from Tzar. Derech Agav, you can ask a kasha. The Rambam's sheet is a Tzar B'Lechaim in Yad Chazaka. The Rambam says is a D'Rabbanan. He goes with the sheet of D'Rabbanan. So I once saw a nice shtickle. I think it was in Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. I didn't get a chance to look. I didn't plan on Mamish talking so much about these in Yonim. But I think I saw Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said that the Rambam's sheet is that if you hit an animal, that's a Tzar B'Lechaim Deraisa. If you go and give mamish, unnecessary anguish to an animal, of course that's Tzar B'Lechaim. It's only the Tzar B'Lechaims of the memelas, like, helping him with his load, helping take off his load and things like that, that we say Tzar B'Lechaim is only the Rabbanan. So it is many psukim. Some Rishonim learn from Oisei Ves Benoi, not to shech the animal on the same day as a parent, as the mother, as the mommy bear. The whole din of shchita, the Ramban learns out that the Torah said dafka to shecht an animal because that is the most humane and compassionate way of killing an animal. That's the bedafka. What they all come and say is inhumane, and it's it's a pumfaket. That's the reason why we do a shchita process. Shiluch hakan, the Ramban says, the Rishonim will say, is to show the gewaltige compassion that the Heilige Bashefer has, and there's countless places. So that's, the first and foremost is you should realize the Torah's hashkafa on an animal is certainly to be compassionate to animal. Chazal tell us that Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he was punished with Yisurin Noirayin for years and years because one time there was a cow or an animal that was going to get geshachtin, and Rabbeinu HaKadosh said to him, when he came under Rabbeinu HaKadosh's frak, right, or he came under his rekel, so he said to him, go, lakach noitzar, this is what your tachlis is. And for that, he got years of Yisurin until there was one time a weasel. And Rabbeinu HaKadosh told the Amsa, the Rabbi, leave him alone. And that was already a ticket for Rabbeinu HaKadosh because he had rachma v'kol ma'asav, he had compassion for the animal. So you see, the Chazal certainly give a sense of compassion and sensitivity to an animal, not to cause tsar, not to cause agmas nefesh to an animal. That's very important. That's very important, and it's a very important thing also to be mechanech children in this. There's a sefer that I saw like this. It's called the Toldos Yaakov, I think. 1 second. Where was it? The Toldos Yaakov. The Toldos Yaakov in Yeridei and Siman Lamed Gimel. He was a contemporary of Rav Yitzchak Chon Spector. You see over there from the Chuvas. And over there he brings down that if a parent sees a child and I hope the children are listening, right? All the kids, I hope they're listening over here. Rabbi DeFordiger, make sure the baby's listening. If a parent sees a child and he's, little Samuel's girls, listen, if a parent sees a child and he's going and being not nice to animals, so the parent has to give musar. He says stronger than musar, but your children are here. He said the parents have to give musar to the child to make sure that the child isn't going to be Tzar B'Lechaim. And then he says, and even if you see somebody else's kid, you have to stop him. So he has to kasha, ain't based in mitzuvim. You only have chinuch on your own children, but based in's only mitzuvah on, based in's not mitzuvah on such a thing. What if the Tzar B'Lechaim is Rabbanon? So he says, that's all that you're not mechayiv to be mechanech somebody else's children when they're not causing agmas nefesh. But if you see someone else's children causing agmas nefesh to an animal or a person, of course you have to be mechanech them. Of course you have to stop them. So there's no shaila. The Chazal gave a tremendous sensitivity and expectation against misusing and abusing animals. Like I mentioned, that's another portion. For what an animal's purpose is, if you have a cat because you want to catch mice, the Gemara says in Baba Metzia Daf Tzadi Zayin that there was once a cat. He ate a little bit too many mice, meese, whatever you call it. And what happened? He was nifter. He was nifter. And the Gemara says that was called Mesa Machmas Melocha because that's his job. That's a job. Avada, there could be a concept that a cat has a job, and Avada, there's a concept of such a musig that you could use an animal. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave animals in order to use. Okay, Shabbos, the Pri Megadim says even if you hold that Tzar B'Lechaim is normally only D'Rabbanan, but on Shabbos everybody agrees that Tzar B'Lechaim is D'Oraisa. And that's why we know there's a din of Shvisas Behemtai, even though we don't paskin, there's a din of Shvisas Caleb like Beis Shammai. But Shvisas Behemtai, everyone agrees that there's a din of Shvisas Behemtai. Why is there That's the Ramban fishy. Why is there a din of shvisas mina Torah on Shabbos? Why does everyone agree? Says the Prima Gadim, because even if the old Tzar B'Chaim is the Rabbanon, but on Shabbos an animal needs to rest also. He works 7 days a week. What do you want from him? He should work all 7 days. So even the man de Amad Tzar B'Chaim Rabbanon, but on Shabbos he agrees that Tzar B'Chaim is deraisa. Now, with this in mind, with this all in mind, and okay, and there's lots of things. I'll just say Bekitzer, Mamish Bekitzer, but people say things like. They say things like fish don't have tzar b'lechaim. I don't know. Does anybody know? I don't know. And they say all types of weird things, like if you're fishing an animal because you want to eat sushi, it's wonderful, right? But if you take an animal, you ever see the chaver? They fish, they do, right? And they take it out, and there he is, Charlie, and he's flapping back and forth on this, and he has this thing that went straight through his tooth over there. And you're telling me, I don't know, there's going to be a tremendous amount of dental bills that are going to be incurred by this fish. He doesn't look like he enjoys it so much as he flaps back and forth. And people say things with the greatest of confidence, like fish don't feel any pain. I don't look like that. It doesn't look like the fish isn't feeling any pain. It looks like you're not feeling any pain. And then you take it and you rip it out. Tremendous amounts of periodontist intervention is going to be required after what you did to this poor fish. And then you throw him back. You throw him back, you just take a picture with him, me and the fish. I don't think that's definitely tzar b'lechaim. And people say, well, they bring a Yavitz. The Yavitz says the exact opposite. I saw the Yavitz inside. The Yavitz in the 111th tshuva. He's discussing over there that maybe bugs and shratzim, he says, don't have like a nervous system. He says a different thing. He says that bugs don't have any malacha. They don't do any malacha. So the only din of tzar b'lechaim was on an animal that does malacha. This is a big chiddush of the Yavitz. And that chiddush, Igros Maisha, in Chayshid Mishpat, in Beis Mem Zayin, argues. He says, of course, it's tzar b'lechaim on bugs and mosquitoes and all these things. It's tzar b'lechaim. He says, if there's bugs and mosquitoes, you're allowed to chase them away, because you're not mechuyev to be abused by the little, fliegelach. You don't have to be abused by all these little creatures and critters, but to go and unnecessary cause them tsar and agmas nefesh. So Ramosha says there is. The Yavitz himself says fish could do malacha. Of course, the Gemara in Baba Kama Daf Nun Daled talks about fish doing work and riding on a fish. So Ibazai, fish, there is tsar b'lechaim, and therefore, bugs. Ramosha says the tsar b'lechaim. Ramosha has a whole truth over there. What's better? When you're killing a bug, he says it's better to do it bigrama. Like, if you have one of those electric things, there's the zappers, right? It's better to do that than to kill it b'yadayim, because Lamaisa, there's a certain shmira that's required when a person kills. Ramosha brings the Orchaim in Parshas Re'eh that talks about when a person is going to kill the Ir Nidachas, that he's not going to have to worry. It's not going to be a roishim on him that he's going to come in incompassionate, because the Torah gives a special shmira to such a person. But al kapanim, you see bar that when it comes to killing bugs, Ramosha said there is a problem of tzar b'lechaim. Just you're allowed to kill it because it's bothering you. He says when you kill it in a compassionate way. Like, don't kill it b'yadayim. I don't know if this means that it's better to buy fly paper, because fly paper seems to be a little bit like, it seems like a lot of agmas nefesh for those guys, no? Seems like a lot of agmas nefesh. I'll just prove it to you that it's a lot of agmas nefesh, because there was once a kid, I remember in camp thousands of years ago, that there was a kid, he once walked right into the fly paper. Whoa, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Can you imagine? Oh, could you imagine? Amram with a beard, with a board. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? It wasn't pretty. Yeah. It wasn't pretty. So he had a lot of guys mafetch. So I imagine that it wasn't cool. So I can imagine that all of the, the bugs that are there, they don't like it. But if that's your only way, you want to sleep at night and you don't have time to be doing that, even that's going to be permitted. And you don't have to worry about tzar b'lechaim. There's also, there's a shaila in the Paiskim if it's tzar b'lechaim ba'adam. Is there tzar? Or the chinuch sounds like that there is. He says, Kol chacham leiv should learn from here musar, and should say if the Torah was makbid even on an animal, Kol shekaim b'bnei adam, that you have to be makbid. Avadi, you have to not to give agmas nefesh to people, not to give agmas nefesh, etc. Okay, there are Baz wants to say that it's only an animal because an animal doesn't have a seichel. Not taking a person that has a seichel, so we tell him, but we tell him that he has to worry about himself. But mitzad sheni, that only works about an adult. But a child, there certainly would be tzar b'lechaim on. So that's that's that kind. Before I begin, just it's time to realize the Torah's hashkafa on Tzar B'Chaim is very, very chomer, very, very chomer. But but let's see. Let's talk about pets for a moment before we go back into muksa. So first of all, did you ever ask the animals in the pet store? Such benevolent, animal-loving people, such wonderful animal-loving individuals. Did you ever ask the dog that's behind the cage or the parakeet that has been ripped away from her family and her shtetl? Do you ever ask her if she enjoys being in jail in Rikers Island with all of these savage beasts all around her? I don't know if she likes it so much. That wonderful pet loving. I don't know if the whole metzias of owning a pet store itself might itself be a breach in Tzar B'Chaim. I don't know how happy Lassie is to not be anymore able to roam in the free. I don't know how happy that gorilla is that he's no longer with his family and his mishpacha, and he's surrounded by, all types of weasels and rodents and cats and dogs and all types of things. I don't know. I don't know. But anyways, but they seem to say that it's a wonderful thing. I don't know. Maisa, so, but let's see. What's the Torah's hashkafa on owning a pet? So there was a sefer. He was the Transylvania Rebbe. He was called the Parkasatya. Oh, I said it wrong. This is going to be a hard one to say. How are we going to say it? The Farkasasa Danya. He was the Rebbe from Transylvania. We'll just call him the Transylvania Rebbe. And they asked him, there was a scandal. What was the scandal in those days? Oh, what a scandal. They found out that the shochet in the shtat had a parakeet. And Lazu Kol Medina, what kind of a shochet is he? And they wanted to disbar him and deshochet him, and they wanted to shecht him that we can't have such a shochet that doesn't pass. He said, pass nisht. So they went to the Afarkasas, I can't say, the Transylvania Rebbe, and they asked him, no, what's going to be? We got to get rid of him. So he writes a whole tshuva over there, and he comes out lebasoif that be'emes, if he didn't know there's a problem in owning a pet, so then you can let him still be the shoichet, but he has to get rid of it because it's hakapas Now, what's this? There are certainly rayas in the Gemara that people had pets. This Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Kuf Vav, the Gemara talks about the shita of Rab Shimon, that the shita of Rab Shimon was, he matters a certain food mitzad muksa called a loof. What's this loof? So the Gemara says that the only animal that eats it is like Orvin, Michael Orvin. So the Rav, the Bartanura on the Mishnah over there says that, but there are wealthy people that Taka owned this Orvim. They own these birds, right? What the Gemara is talking about, Rishayim. And Rabbi Kiva Eger brings down over there, Kol Yisrael are b'nei malachim. So everybody's right to own, Orvim and other types of birds and stuff. So you see that there were Jews that owned pets. The Gemara in Shabbos at Daf Sadiyah Mebeis talks about children that they owned chagovim. They had little grasshoppers, little Samuel's child. Tell Tati that you want him to buy you a grasshopper, like the kinderlach that in the time of the Gemara. They had little grasshopper lach, and they used to play with the grasshopper. So tell Tati that that's what you want for a present. Right? Good girl. Akapanim. But that's what they used to have. That's what they used to have in the Haim, in Baghdad. They used to play with chagovim. They used to play with little grasshopper lach. And the Gemara says over there, when the grasshopper would die, they would make a levaya and a spadim and everything. So you see that they used to play with grasshopper lach. And the Gemara, we see in Taisus already on Shabbos Daf Mem Beis, it says, but first, the Taisus that we saw yesterday, Rabbi Yosef said that what could you do with a chick? You could tell Tati, little Samuel's maidel, tell Tati that you want him to buy you a little bird, a little fagla, right? Not your Aunt Faggy, a little fagla. Tell you wanted to buy a little birdie. Right? So why? Because Taisus says that it's so much fun to play with those little birds. So much fun. So all we saw yesterday is that it still might be muksa. Okay? Because maybe you can't be miyachid, or maybe you were not miyachid. It could be what we spoke about yesterday. But everyone agrees that playing with a bird was fun for children. So it seems to be that this was definitely accepted in the times of Chazal. Shlomo Melech, the Pasuk in Melachim in Perek Yud and Pasuk Chav Beis brings down that Shlomo Melech had a whole ganze zoo. The ganze Bronx gewenlich over there he had. And the Gemara in Tainis and Daf Chav Dalid brings down that there was a certain Rebbe, he had fish to show the kinderlach and the children. Mitzad Sheni, we saw yesterday that the Sefer Chassidim in the 1038th ois says that he brings the Pasuk in Koheles that animals, all they do are mar behevel, and who needs it? You're wasting your money. You could be giving your money to aniyim. You could be giving your money. Why are you being megadol a kelev b'toich beisai? Why don't you megadol a yasim b'toich beisai? Why don't you do something with tayelis in you with your money? Why you going to give your money to das? Give your money to Torah, says the Sefer Hasidim. And the Yavit says this is only for Goyim. And I told you yesterday, the Ber Moshe, he says that this is taka shtos and narishkeit. Which Shlomo Zalman said it's a mishagas. So what is the Torah's hashkafe in pets? What's the Torah's hashkafa when it comes to pets? So I would say like this, like we always say, Siman Reish Lamed Aleph. Reish Lamed Aleph, the tzaddikim said, is the most important siman in Shulchan Aruch. She'ilakol masecha l'shem shemayim. That everything that you do should be l'shem shemayim. So it depends. I would say that, for an adult to have a dog and it should be his best friend, that's already a little bit aggressive. That's a little bit ridiculous. That's a little bit of a mishigas. Give your money to tzedakah, okay? But if a person wants to, maybe for a child, to have a dog, not a dog, we'll see, a dog's a bigger problem, but to have maybe like, a little bird, or to have something, a little crocodile or something, or something cute, or kangaroo or something like that. So then, it's probably better than all the other gadgets that you can give the little character. And that's what you already see in Chazal, right? It's better that than a smartphone, Rabbi Saib. And what does it do for a child? It teaches a child to be devoted. It teaches a child to be careful and sensitive to others, preparing for marriage, Rabbi Saib. It teaches him to be sensitive to others. It teaches the child, a responsibility. You could learn the halachas with the child of Tzar Bali Chaim. You could learn the halachas with the child of Muksa, and not eating before an animal teaches the child compassion, etc., etc. Teaches him rachmanis. There's a story with Arizal that there was a person who was having little problems. Yeah, for example, goldfish, right? It seems to be that Rabbi Zolti is telling us that it helps him in all of his issues, right? It's so the chayr. There's nothing wrong with having a goldfish for children or things like that, or like a dolphin or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that if it's being done l'shem shemayim, but not when it's being done like a person is, it becomes like one of the family members, right? I once walked into a house of somebody who was moving in. They had a shiloh of a mezuzah. So they asked me to come to check out the something. There was a shiloh. I was in New York, and somebody asked me when he was coming, he was buying a house. He also wanted me to see the house he's buying. And when I came in there was a picture on the wall of a dog. There's a picture on the wall of a dog. And it was clearly not just like some a bunch of dogs playing poker, which none of you guys know about. But it was clearly like a real picture. It was like a real picture of dog. So I couldn't hold back. So the guy was there. So I asked him, who's that? Who's that? So he says to me with the most seriousness, he says to me, that was the best friend I ever had. L'chaim. That was the best friend I ever had. All right. Derech Agav, his wife was sitting right there. Right. That was the best friend that I ever had. So that's not the Hashkafas HaTorah, Rabbi Say. But and there's a story with the Arizal. The Arizal talks about there was a person who was having problems. So he came to the Arizal. The Arizal said, problems? Of course you're having problems. You used to have a ladder outside your house, and the chickens used to climb up that ladder to get in wherever they had to get in. You took away the ladder. How do you expect not to have problems? You weren't compassionate to the chicken loch, the little schnitzels. So again, the Torah's hashkafa is to be rachmanis to animals, because then it creates in the person rachmanis. So if a person wants to buy a little, like a little frog or something, right? Or something that the kids could, have something to do and be busy with, a little rabbit loch or something. So that's not against the Hashkafas HaTorah. Fish tank mistam is not. Peliyoid says if you have it, make sure you're focused on Sar Balei Chayim. The dog is already a little bit different, because the Gemara Baba Kama Daf Tesvav, Baba Kama says that you're not supposed to be megadol the kelev ra b'toich beisai. And the definition of a kelev ra is quite not so pashit. Is it that he actually bites, right? Or is it that he just barks? There's a nidin about this ayin chayshim mishpat in Simin Tough Tess, in Siv Gimel. I must tell you, the Goyim say that a dog is man's best friend. As a matter of fact, the Maral is chaylik on this, right? The Maral holds that a human being, the Maral in the Baragoyla on the 98th page, the Maral says that a human being is the me'ula of all of the brias. The greatest bria under a malach is taka, is Adam, and even more than a malach if he becomes more than a malach. But Masha'en Kain, a dog, he says, is the most shafel of all of the brias. All the Nivraim, the most lowly is a dog. Maybe, I don't know, maybe man's best friend, maybe who the man is, right? The Gemara Baba Kama Daf Samech, the Maral says that when a kelev is barking, so then it means that the Malach HaMavis is coming to town, right? What's the pshat? Why when the Kelev is barking? Because he understands from the Malach HaMavis, because he's holding so far down with the Malach HaMavis. So I would hope that it's not man's best friend. Obviously, if a person needs a dog, we'll see soon in Halacha, for security reasons, he needs a dog for a seeing eye dog or something. So we'll see that, Ramosha talks about it. Ramosha tells her where to sit him in shul. He says not to give him a Mizrach seat in the shul, but Al Kopanim, you can even bring him into a shul, says the Goyin Rav Moshe. All right. So this is the etzem idea. Just bekitzer. If you're going to have a pet, you must know that you must feed your animals. The Gemara in Gittin, Daf Samech Beis, the Gemara Brachas and Daf Mem. You have to feed your animals before you eat. And that's a din d'oraisa the Magen Avram learns. Let's say I said I'm moitzi lechem in arts and I realized I didn't feed yet my, I didn't feed yet my my hippopotamus, or I didn't feed yet, right, my giraffe. So then the halacha is, you said the word, amoitzi lechem min haaretz. So the halacha is you're allowed to say, feed Fido or feed the giraffe. I don't know any good giraffe names. Feed the giraffe, right? Because you're not allowed, it is an issa deraisa. You're not allowed, it's a geshmak shaila. When do you have an issa deraisa to eat, but the food is kosher? The answer is that you didn't feed your animal. And at that point, you're allowed to actually talk after you said the words amoitzi lechem min haaretz. And this is taka, we learned this out from Rivka. We learn it out all over the place. So this is something very important. If a person wants to have animals, he better make sure that he's careful. And the makor of not eating before your animal, says the Yavitz, is from Tzar Balei Chayim, because you have to be compassionate. And there's a murdik Yad Ephraim. Mamshe murdik Yad Ephraim. It's in Kuf Samach Zayin. The murdik is he brings down over there a different makor to this halacha of not eating before your animals. There's a Gemara, there's a pasuk in Chukas, there's a pasuk by Rivka. He brings down a different makor to not eating before your animals. He brings down an unbelievable medrash. It says that Alexander used to go around, even a snack, Rabbi Rosenberg, even a snack, because we're chayshus. The Gemara Gittin says, yafilu litoim, drink. So the Ksav Sofer and others want to be makel, because the drink, we say that the tsar of an adam in thirst is greater than an animal. They bring a raya from Rivka that it says hashkei v'gam gmalecha hashkei, so that the drink of the person comes before the drink of an animal. Okay, but Al Kapanim, listen to a murdik Yad Ephraim. Alexander used to go around to other countries and cities to find out what's going on. He came to one city. And listen what happened. There was a king over there, and he wanted to sit on the din Torah, the judgment of the king. So the king, there was a person that came and said, I bought this land, and in the land, there was a treasure chest. And the other person said, so Mamela, I bought the land. I didn't buy the treasure chest, so take back the treasure chest, right? So he says, I'm not taking it back because I sold you whatever's there. So imagine as I would say, give it to the koilel, right? So what does he say? He says, you take the gold. And he says, no, you take the gold. I bought the land. I didn't buy gold. He says, you take the gold. I don't want it. So the king had an idea. And the king said like this. He said, look, du hast a Mädel? Sagt ja. Sagt du hast a Azin? Hast a Azin? Sagt ja. Sagt it's right, they must have been Litvaks, because otherwise the shidduch would have been made from many years before. But anyways, so he said, du hast a Mädel, sagt ja, sagt hast a Ma, hast a Jingel, sagt ja, Mazel tov, mach a shidduch, and we'll give the money to the kids, right? We'll give money to the kids. So Alexander is sitting there, and he's mispoil. So the king says, what? I didn't say good? This is the Medrash Rabbah in Bereishis Lamed Gimel. He says, what? I didn't say good? He says, what would you do in your country? He asked Alexander. So Alexander, he says, what we would have done is, I would have killed him, and I would have taken the gold for me. Right? So the king had a kasha. Frek the king says to him, does the sun shine in your country? So yeah. Rain and everything? Yeah. King thinks a minute, says, du hast animals in your country? You have animals by you? So yeah. He says, beseder. Now I understand. B'schus the animals. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the sunshine over there and the rain. Adam u'behema tashi Hashem. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu is gives the, is mefarnes for the people, and sometimes for the animals. In your country, it's only b'schus the animals. So the Yad Ephraim brings this medrash, and he says, Davar Nifla. He says, we give the animals to eat before us to show, to vice, that who knows if we have the schusim, right? Maybe our entire schus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the food, says the Yad Ephraim, is b'schus the animals. So, that's the reason why. Memela, the Mefarshim say, Murder Gibshat. That's why when it came to Rivka, so Rivka, we saw she gave the water first to Eliezer and then to the animals. So they say Murder Gibshat, because that water for sure wasn't coming b'schus the animals, because it was water of Nace. So if it's water of Nace, it's not coming for the animals. It's coming, obviously, it was coming b'schus Rivka. So the Noibazai, that case, you don't have to say it comes b'schus the animals. But Akapanim, you certainly have to, by Noach also, it says, by Noach in the Teva, it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll give food for you and for the animals. So the Mefarshim say, yeah, because of that, the animals in the Teva were saved b'schus Noach, and not the other way around. So this is, again, if you're going to have a pet, you have to know how to do it properly. You have to know how to do it properly. Like I said before, there's no, fish also. L'chayra, you have to feed the fish beforehand, right? L'chayra. Yeah. Okay. I'm not even going to talk about hunting. The Noda B'Yehuda says Jewish people don't hunt. That's for Nimrod. That's worse than an Isser in the Torah. That's not a derech Yisrael. That's not, even though there might not be tzar b'lechaim because you're killing the animal, you're not making him suffer, but that's just the derech of the goyim. To stop kill an animal for no reason. That's why fishing and all these things, I don't know. So that's Adkan. What is the, our basic hashkafa, halacha, our attitude toward animals. In a nutshell, star b'lechaim is deraisa. Certainly not to cause agmas nefesh to anybody, including an animal. That makes you a different person. To use an animal's mutter, to abuse an animal is chalila. Right, countless psukim, like we saw many, many places, right, where the Torah certainly warns against behavior, against it. When you want to know if you want to have a fish and you want to have things that teaches a child to have responsibility and compassion and things like that, so that l'chayra is not a problem. And certainly we'll see now, that's what we'll see. Certainly if a person's going to have animals, he certainly better be fluent in the halachas of muksa. He certainly has to know what the halachas of muksa. They say a story from Rabbi Yerucham, that Rabbi Yerucham was mispal from a story of a guy. There was a guy that didn't know why. He was on a bus or something, or I guess some type of a wagon. I don't know, a train, something. And for some reason, the guy got up and he changed his seat. Rabbi Yerucham used to say about the story. And then this train or whatever, this bus went into the water. And because he had changed his seat, he was right by the door and he managed to get out. And there was somebody passing by right then and saved him from the water. And the guy, when they were interviewing him that he was saved, they asked him what he thinks is a guy. What do you think his schus was? So the guy said that he's always very kind to animals. He's always very kind to animals, even a guy fish days. When a person has racham of a kol ma'asav, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu taka, it definitely reciprocates. That's l'chayra. That's part one. I just make sure, that's the first part. Rabbi say, what's the Torah's views in general on the inyanim of animals? That's part one. But now let's go, Bez Hashem, to the Inyan of muksa. Let's come back to our sugya of muksa. We saw yesterday that the pashtis animals. The pashtis are muksa on Shabbos. Even pets are muksa on Shabbos. And we have the idea being that you can't be miyachid something. Either you can't be miyachid for a shtus, so you can't be miyachid as a pet, or you can't be miyachid something which inherently nothing changed about it. You're just saying that thing which Chazal said is off limits, you're saying is on limits, and you're not actually changing anything about the animal. And the third idea we saw, which is very important, is that Chazal made a gzeira that you're not allowed anyways to be mishtamish in an animal. Since it's a gzeira, you're not allowed to be mishtamish in an animal, you're not allowed to use it. So what are you going to say? You're going to say, I'm going to use it. That lahedge is against Chazal. Once you can't say that, the yichud's not chal. Once the yichud's not chal, the animal remains as Goigritz, Simukim, and the animal remains as a stone. The animal remains like off limits, kivyachol. That's the idea, and therefore pets in general are muksa. Now, Agov, if a person will see in a moment has a seeing eye dog. All right, let's go to that case first. What's the din of a see? Let's go to a few cases now. Pets, you can have a pet, what we just spoke about, but if you can have a pet, it's certainly you're not going to be allowed to be picking him up and moving him, etc. He certainly is muksa. That we saw yesterday, the psak of Moshe. We saw that's the psak of Shlomo Zalman. Then the Mishnah Berurah clearly over here doesn't say any exceptions, and therefore the makubal up in the paiskim is that a pet is muksa. We'll see in a minute, maybe a limit chos, but the makubal is that a pet should be l'chayra muksa. Now, what about a seeing eye dog? This is something I don't really have a clarity in this. I see that in the Shmir Shabbos, in the 18th parak, in the 62nd Ara, he brings down that a seeing eye dog is not muksa. Now, I have a hard time understanding this because Kafi, what we just said, I agree that the yichud and being miyachid a dog for the purpose of helping someone blind is a very big toyelis, right? But why does that make it not muksa? If Chazal made a gzeira that you're not allowed to be mishtamish in an animal, then that gzeira it applies to any animal, like we saw yesterday with the light plug. And the fact that I'm being miyachid for a chashav tzairich shouldn't take away the fact that a yichud can't be chal on something that Chazal came along and said you can't be mishtamish. So the yichud shouldn't be chal and it should remain muksa. And I did see that there are some svarim tates muksa. I'm not sure what to do here. The Igros Moshe and Aleph Memeh, I told you as a tshuva about what do you do if the person is blind, le'aleinu, and he wants to bring the dog to shul. So Moshe doesn't seem to be bothered by muksa. That's the truth. It's not mefurish. Moshe just says don't give him a seat in the mizrach, but you can bring him into the shul. And I don't know. The only thing I would tell you, Rabbi, is the person that's blind. I once talked to a person that was blind and he had a seeing eye dog, and he told me that what he does, and which I think is the right thing. He said he doesn't touch the dog, he doesn't move the dog, and all these things, right? He told me that he just holds on to the leash, and the dog takes him. So you're not pulling the dog, you're not doing anything, you're not moving the dog. You're allowed to do that. If the dog moves you, then there's nothing wrong with that. Right? Then, I don't know if the Rabbi Rosenberg is asking, was Moshe talking about on Shabbos? The mashmayis is that he's talking about Shabbos also. So I'm not so clear about this. Why would a dog, I don't know why a dog wouldn't, he writes, it's not muksa. I don't understand why it's not muksa. I understand that he'll be allowed to let the dog see-eye him, lead him to where he has to go. But I don't understand why it wouldn't be muksa. That's number one. Number two is, could you pet a dog on Shabbos? What's the child? Is that allowed for all dogs to have the dog lead? Pashtis, it's look, I'll be honest with you, it's not so practical on Shabbos because dogs stop and dogs don't want to go, etc. And then you're going to wind up pulling the dog and yanking the dog, and that's tiltal, minatzad. You're indirectly moving the muksa for the dog, right? So it's going to inevitably be a problem. I guess in a makam of a person who's blind, he's a trained dog. He always leads and he doesn't cause trouble. But we'll get to Itzah. Let's first focus on muksa. Let's focus on muksa. Now, it's like this. First of all, are you allowed to pet a dog? Are you allowed to pet any animal? So this is one of the most interesting things you find in halacha. So there's a Mishnah Berurah. We mentioned this already, is the hair on an animal muksa. So there's a Shulchan Aruch in Siman Yud Aleph, in Siman Shin Beis Siv Yud Aleph, that says, if your hands are dirty with shmutz, mekancha biznavasus, you could wipe them on the tail of a ferd, or this nav of a para, or the tail of a cow. B'mapa kasha, this is what you're allowed to do. Comes again, the Bir Halacha, and he says, what's going on over here? What's going on over here? You're allowed to wipe your hands on the hair of a horse. How are you allowed to do that? The hair is muksa. The horse is muksa. Horse, of course, is muksa. And if the horse is muksa, so then why is the hair not muksa? So the Taisus Shabbos, the Bir Halacha brings down. He brings down the Taisus Shabbos. Hainu ein mechuber babeim. I guess we're talking about that you have a separate horse tail. And that's what you're wiping yourself on. So you're allowed to wipe yourself on it because if it's attached to the animal, then it's muksa like the behemoth is muksa. As Zay says, the Taisus Shabbos. The Bir Halacha, he said that's a little bit shver. It's not a little bit shver, no? A little bit shver to say that that's what Rabbi said, I'll add a kasha. Doesn't it say in the Shulchan Aruch that we're talking about either on a horse tail or on a cow tail? Does anybody know what a cow tail looks like? I don't know what it looks like. What does a cow tail look like? Is it hairy? What's a cow tail look like? It looks like a horse tail? Where's Chamchi? I mean, he probably had it for lunch. Where is he? Lunch man. What does a cow tail look like? What does a cow tail look like? A small mop. Ah, yeah, it's like a hairy looking creature. Yeah. Rabbi Blumenthal, you're from Flatbush. You probably know what it looks like. It looks like it's a bit thicker than what? Could you write what's going on here? It's thicker than a horse? Ah, really? No, those are the ones in Bedford Avenue. Sorry. No. All right, but sure. You're from Flatbush. No, what does it look like? No, not that share. Other share. What's going on with you people?
Abaisa, what's going on?
Oh, we got unmuted. Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Hello. What's going on? Is the share going on?
Coming on.
Shlomi, what are you eating?
This is dangerous.
We're eating butter popcorn.
What happened to the meeting?
Share with the rest of the class.
Hey, Mr. Corona, I want to share with the rest of the class.
Amshi, tell us the story. What's going on with you today?
Is the share over?
I don't know. I was chilling in Hawaii over here. And
I don't know. The horses came to claim their COVID. I don't know.
What happened?
I get that guy.
I think the Zoom caught a coronavirus.
The share was over once we started horsing around.
Did everybody remain? Now you know how much we're doing a good thing, because I've never had a blackout in my house in the last year, and only right now, because the Yetzer Hara knows that we're Isaac in the Davar Shebekdusha, and when we're Isaac in the Davar Shebekdusha, the Yetzer Hara has to work harder and harder and harder. Akapanim, where were we? We're up to the hairs of a Baal Chai. The Shulchan Aruch seems to say that the hairs of a Baal Chai are muksa, are not muksa, and that you can wipe your hand. Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch, you can wipe your hands on the back of a horse tail or the back of a cow tail. So the kasha is you're touching muksa. Says the Taisus Shabbos, we're talking about that it was a cut off tail, and that he had a tail that was there, and he was using it to wipe his hands. As I sagt, the Taisus Shabbos. This is a very big doichik. The Shulchan Aruch's mashmayis is that if your hands are dirty, you wipe it on the back of a horse or the back of a cow. The Bir Lacha over here is not happy with this doichik, and he says an unbelievable kula Rabbi Isai. We once said a different shot, if you remember, from the Shvisa Shabbos. The Shvisa Shabbos in Koitzer and Sivkat Lamed Zayin said that tiltal b'mixas, who remembers this, Rabbi Isai? Tiltal b'mixas as a din of tiltal minatzad. And when you're moving something slightly, so then it's mutter if you're doing it, l'tzorich davar mutter. So he says moving the tail of a horse is not really moving it properly, because really it stays in its place because it doesn't move. It's attached to the horse. So if you're doing it l'tzorich davar mutter, dainu to wipe your hands and your hands shouldn't be dirty, so then it's going to be mutter. As I sagt, the Shvisa Shabbos. But the Bir Halacha says a zakula, unbelievable kula. The Bir Halacha says, he says, maybe Efshaloi Asru only the goof of the Baal Chai, but not the hair, which is Mechuber Lahem. The Loi Chashiv Kegufain B'tzarchian. Maybe, says the Bir Halacha, the only time that the Chazal Aser, the Muksa, is when you're moving the actual item. But the hair is not considered the item itself. It's not Kegufa Dover. It's unbelievable kula. You hear this, Maisa? That means that the Bir Halacha is saying the reason why you're allowed to wipe your hands on the hair of a horse is because that's not the gufa davar. The horse is what Chazal asered. The dog is what Chazal asered, but the hair not. Lefi this, according to the Bir Halacha, if you want to stroke a dog, or if you want to stroke a, let's say a bear, right? Let's say you want to stroke a gorilla or a bear, or elephants don't have hair, do they? They have whiskers, maybe. They do? They have hair? Oh, look at that. So if you want to stroke a hair, this is machlekes if elephants have hair. But if you want to stroke the hair of a dog, lefi this Bir Halacha, it's going to be mutter. Because the hair is not the chetza. Now, Rabbi Isai, that doesn't mean you'll be allowed to pat it. Because when you're going to pat it, like pet the dog, when you're going to pat it, what's going to happen? So the actual body is also going to move, right? When you move it. That we said is only mutter by a mace, because of covered a mace, so you're allowed to, be wiping around the mace or washing the mace, even though it's going to move the body. But you're not allowed to stop move the body. The heter of the Bir Halacha is that you're moving the hair, and the hair is not something that is considered the gufa dover. I'm being asked, why is it different than grass? Because grass is attached to the ground. So grass isn't metaltal, b'chlal. So that we explained b'shaita that grass might be better. Now, I must tell you, I'm a little bit nervous. Maybe the bir halacha is only talking about hair on a cow or hair on a horse, which is like a separate entity. Maybe he's not talking about by a dog. You understand my suffix, Rabbi say? Maybe the hair, which is on the actual body of the dog, that's like the body. And what the Bir Halacha was talking about was when it was a tail, which was a separate entity. Maybe that's where the Bir Halacha was willing to be makel. So Halacha, Rabbi say, if you see somebody on Shabbos petting a dog, which,
Rabbi.
He has a picture on the wall of this dog. It's a pet. He loves it very much. So there's a limit schus to be makel. One limit schus that there is a tzad in the Rishonim that a pet is in muksa, right? Even though we saw it's not really such a good tzad because Rabbeinu Yosef was told, or maybe there's no gzeira and lo plug of ishtamshis in an animal, but on a dog, everybody holds it about it. But maybe there's a tzad to say that you could be miyachad a dog, which we held that not like that. But mitzad sheni, if you see all he's doing is, rubbing the dog's hair, maybe as a bir halacha, which I'm telling you that's very shver. I don't think you have a bir halacha because the bir halacha is probably at most talking about the horse hair, which is a separate tail. Only there do we have a bir halacha that's willing to be makel, who says he'd be makel on the hair, which is the actual goof of the behema. It's very difficult to be makel. And even the bir halacha himself ends off with the words, v'tzarech ian. So I don't know. A little bit schwer. This is a little bit schwer. It's a little bit schwer. I don't know. Don't know. A little bit schwer, I say. Now, what happened over here today? Dogs have 2 coats of hair? What does that mean? No. That's a doggy sweater. That's something else. No. That's the doggy sweater from the people that like dogs a lot, She's also usually not married. Where's the Bir Halacha? Siman Shin Beis Sif Yud Aleph. Now, I don't know what to do over here. What happened over here today? I don't know what happened. Stan, there's a big kasha on that Shulchan Aruch. What happened to the Yisr Mishtamshis in an animal? You're not allowed to be Mishtamish in an animal. So I guess no matter what, you're going to have to either say like the Tosfos Shabbos, that it's detached, or you're going to have to say like the Bir Halacha, that the hair is not connected. So therefore it's not the Cheftza, which would work much better with what I'm saying, that it's not the actual hair which is on the animal, and that it's, a separate tail of sorts. Now, the Maisa like this, in Viter over here in Shinches, I see from the time that's going to be a little bit difficult to really go Viter, but just one Nakuda here. One Nakuda, and then we'll stop. The Shulchan Aruch in the next Sif, the Sif Lamed Tes talks about how animals are muksa. Sif Mem talks about Kol Be'ema Chayev Oif Medadin Oisam B'Chatzer. Here the Shulchan Aruch tells us that there are situations where you're actually allowed to move an animal. You're allowed to a Be'ema Chayev Oif. You're allowed to Medadin means to push them. You're allowed to seems to be you're allowed to push them around in a Chatzer. How? Oiches B'Tzavarim. You take them by their neck. Ubitstadim umalicham. You take them from the side and you walk with them sort of, right? If the Baal Chai needs this, he says Bilvad shleig biyam b'inyan shakra gleim and aretz. But he says you got to make sure that you can't lift it because then it's muksa. You're only allowed to push it. Now what's this? He says chutz from a chicken, you can't even push a chicken because what happens is a chicken is magbis atzmim and aretz. Inevitably you're going to wind up picking up a chicken. But a chicken, you can certainly push the chicken. Now, what's all this? Mazeh. So right away, the Mishabura says, this is al tsar bali chayim, and in loikein, it's aser. In loikein, it's aser. The kol midi, the chazi, the tilta, kashem shein metaltal, and kachem metaltal mixes. We are letting you over here move the animal b'mixes. You're allowed to pick up its neck, or you pick it like this, you push it a little bit, and then it goes on its own. Now, the Mishabura says the only way we're allowed to do that is when it's Sar Bali Chayim, because you're not even really ever allowed to be metaltal b'mixes. So obviously b'mixes we allow when it's Sar Bali Chayim. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here, right? To make this practical, To make this practical, if a person has a bug on him, he has to blow it off. You can't take it. First of all, you can't take it and grab it and throw it because it's a problem of tzeda, and it's also a problem of muksa. It's also a problem of muksa. He could probably take a knife and push it away or something like that, because that would be tiltum min atzad l'tzarich davar mutter. Also, if something is geferlich, so then sometimes you have that it's a graf shalrei. So if it's a graf shalrei, maybe you'd be able to push it also. If it's something that's ekeldik, let's say like a mouse or like a rat, climbs onto you or something, there you are lying in your bed, and the mouse, which you thought was caught underneath the bed, chamshi, all of a sudden starts to snuggle, right? So then b'kai gavna, mistama, even you would agree at that point it's ekeldik, I think, right? So then b'kai gavna, you're going to be allowed to push it away. You'll be allowed to push it away because you're not doing any trapping of any sorts, and if anything, pushing it away would be allowed mitzad graf shalrei. Shulchan Aruch over here goes on to a sugya which is not mamish our sugya. In Sif Mem Aleph, it talks about holding a child in Rishis Harabim. The Shulchan Aruch is not so much our sugya. It talks about, if K'may that we just lahavdil spoke about an animal and how you're allowed to push an animal. So now the Shulchan Aruch gets involved in pushing a person in Rishis Harabim, and gets involved. We spoke about this when we learned Haitzah. This comes out the way, if you learn Mishnah Berurah, the way it comes out is that if you have a child and he doesn't know how to walk it properly, but he's able to walk with the help of parents, so then you're allowed to actually, mommy will hold him on one side, tati will hold him on the other side, and he walks in the middle, right? As long as you're not carrying him, that's fine. As long as he's putting down his own feet, that's what it says over here in the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says, "Haisha medadis b'na afilu b'shus harabim ubavad shaloi tigreu." She can't drag him. Eliyeh magbiyai ragla echas v'yaniach hasheni ala aretz. V'yishan aleach yachsav v'yaniach ragla shegbiya. Shinim tzal oilamu nishla ragla echas. It has to be always that he's leaning on one of his feet. He always has to be leaning on one of his feet. Now, I'll be messiahing with this. There's an incredible Mishnah Berurah over here. Unbelievable chiddush in this Mishnah Berurah. Ramesh has a tshuva where he talks about a child that decided to stop in the middle of a Carmelis. The kid stopped. He's not going. Right? Ramesh is in, because this is very serious halachas. We know that there's a rule of chai noisei atzmai. Chai noisei atzmai means that it's an issa d'rabbanan to lift a person, to carry a person in Rishus Harabim. Is only an issa d'rabbanan if he's somebody that be'etzim could walk himself, a baby or a baby that crawls. So that's not considered it walks himself, and that would be an issa d'raisa, says the Mishnah Berurah in Kufnun Daled Bayas. If a baby only crawls, you would not be allowed to carry him in Rishus Harabim. Berega, the baby's able to walk and he has one foot that he's leaning against, for example, then you're even allowed not to carry him, but you're allowed to hold him and let him walk on his own. Okay, to drag a child is never allowed. A chayla, the Paiskim say, is allowed. A sleeping person is a problem also. Ramosha in Chelik Daled Siman Tzadi Aleph, I'm going fast because we spoke about this. Ramosha in Chelik Daled Siman Tzadi Aleph talks about a child that stopped in a Carmelis and a baby or something like that. The kid is crying. So could you pick him up and carry him home? So Ramosha says, look, again, if we're talking about a baby that can't walk on his own, then that's a different story. But since he says we're talking about a child that could technically walk on his own, so he says, oh, look, and the kid just stopped. You know how it goes. I'm stopping. So it's a Carmelis, says Ramosha, and Chai noisei atzmai, says Ramosha. It's a shvus. The shvus, says Ramosha. Says Ramosha, shvus to shvus. The makom tsar, Ramosha is willing to be mekel. That's the Ramosha. For Rishus Harabim, obviously it's all a different story. Here, the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkat and Kufnun Daled is an unbelievable Mishnah Berurah. I don't know. We spoke about this back then. And in Amir al-Akam, we spoke about it. The Mishnah Berurah says, you should know, if you have a katan that can't go on its own, then we don't say chai noisei atzmai. He says, v'yedei goy mutter, in our Rishus Harabims that are only a Carmelis, it's mutter for a goy. You hear this, Maisa? You can have a goy carry a child in a Carmelis. Why? Amir al-Akam, in a Carmelis, it's a shvus to shvus. It's mutter b'makim, tzarech gadol, hefsid. It's mutter b'makim, mitzvah. Why does the Mishnah Berurah not say over here that the only time you're going to be allowed to carry a kid in Rishus Harabim, in our Rishus Harabims, is if the Mishnah Berurah seems to say it's mutter stam to tell a guy to carry a child in our Rishus Harabims, in a Carmelis upon him. Why? The only time shvus to shvus is mutter is if there's some level of a tzarech. And the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say anything. He just says, Al Yidei Goy is mutter. Rechaim Kanievsky in the Shaina Halacha says, Al Yidei Goy mutter b'rishus Rab Nidon b'tzarchi inksas. Because tzarchi, and why doesn't the Mishnah Berurah say, yeah, even though maybe we can consider it to be a shvus shvus, but shvus shvus is only mutter b'makom mitzvah b'makom tzarich. But you got to remember this Mishnah Berurah. It sounds like from the Mishnah Berurah that Amir La'akum carrying a child, there is some makom to be makel. There's some makom makel. Rabbi say, no more Zoom. Gam Zoom Lataiva. Tomorrow we're in the Kailul Bez Hashem. I will see you all there. Those that have corona, I will not see you there. Those that are not feeling well, I will not see you there. And everybody else, I will see you there. Bez Hashem. Who's not coming tomorrow? Is anybody not coming? Right? Little Samuel's girl, are you coming tomorrow? What? Are you guys coming tomorrow? Who's not coming? Wait, let me, I'm going to just take